Hello, good morning, and I welcome each and every one of you to our Funding Our Futures seminar. My name is Candace Perry, and I am the Director of the Office of Environmental Justice at New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. My team in the EJ office is one of the organizers of this program, so thank you to my team who's behind the scenes coordinating. So while I'm really encouraged by how many of you decided to join us this morning, if where you are looks like anything where I am, you know the weather outside is pretty nasty. And so we've labored a great deal over the decision to transition this program to being completely virtual. And while it pains us to not be in person with you, we're comforted by the fact that many of you are watching safely from your homes. So thank you for being here. So we have some great content that we've prepared for you and excited to throw it all at you and also to give you some time to jump into the discussion. The responsibility of the staff within the Environmental Justice Office is to integrate environmental justice into the regulatory and programmatic activities of the Department of Environmental Protection. And so that means retooling our processes to reduce environmental harms that have plagued overburdened communities for far too long, and to increase access to environmental benefits. This retooling effort means that all of our offices within the agency are collaborating on solutions, and we're asking the public about input on those solutions. But state government is not the only entity who can and who should be working towards solutions to improve the quality of life for environmental justice communities. EJ communities themselves or yourselves have all kinds of solutions of your own for what you and your communities need. For many of you, it's not the lack of solutions that you're struggling with, but the staff and the financial capacity to implement your solutions. So fortunately, because of the commitment to environmental justice by the Biden administration, we're in a season where unprecedented amounts of dollars are flowing to state agencies like mine and to communities directly to implement EJ solutions. And so now is the time to take advantage of all of these monies and to put them to good use. The vision for this session came from conversations the EJ office and our partner, the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, have had, because while this season of environmental justice funding is so needed, it can also be overwhelming. There are a lot of different programs and a lot of different opportunities to sort through. And keeping up with all of it, being ready to apply, and then successfully managing those funds can be a steep hill to climb. But the exciting news is that there are resources to help you through it. And so today, we're going to share some of those resources with you. And so with that, I want to pass the baton over to my colleague, Melissa Miles, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, to take us a bit further into our program today and to share some remarks of her own. So Melissa.
Thank you so much, Candace. And you framed that really, really nicely. I just wanted to do just a tad bit of storytelling here at the top of the day. Again, thanking you all for rolling with us through a pivot. Had we been in person, we'd be doing some cultural presentation or, and land acknowledgement now, but in the interest of keeping this to a half day, we've had to shorten the schedule immensely. And so you will be receiving the document version of the cultural presentation that you would have gotten had we been in person. But yeah, just to take you a little bit into my story, I am the executive director of the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. We're a statewide organization. We are very much grassroots founded, and our staff and our board are all comprised of folks who, have been in this struggle for environmental justice for quite some time. And we are partners with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in several ways. I myself sit on the Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And this idea originally was forged out of that, out of those conversations, as Candace mentioned. But also, I myself had the amazing opportunity about a year ago now. I was in Washington, D.C., with Communities First Fund. And they were really the first folks that I heard sounding the alarm about what was coming down the pipe in terms of federal funding. They brought the EPA to us, they brought the DOE to us, basically grassroots organizations from all around the country. And to be really honest, I was very skeptical because although I myself had never managed a federal grant, I had heard many, many stories and they just did not sound good. So fast forward maybe 4, in-person events with Communities First. And, I realized that I couldn't be the holder of the information, that it needed to be disseminated, that as, a statewide organization, normally our work is around toxics, air pollution, waste, incineration, ports and goods movement and trucks and building emissions and brownfields and, Superfund sites. But that if we did not utilize our capacity and our resource to bring this kind of information to the state, that, we would be at a loss. And so, it really, I really began to feel a burning in my heart to make sure that we pass this information on, that the same people that I had access to, that others in the state would have access to. And so that's, how we came here today on very short notice. It was probably just a little over a month ago that we began to plan this, but the urgency is here, folks. We know that while there are many billions of dollars, that, there's a lot that could happen and go wrong. And the last time we saw this kind of investment in infrastructure was a very different time in our country's history, where the values were very much shaped around segregation. And we see the results of that in our communities today. EJ communities exist because of those type of policies that we saw during, the last big infrastructure push. So, it's going to be up to us to make sure that this money gets used right this time. And I just have a few slides that I want to take you through just to frame out what the money's looking like. Thanks, Sarah. So I'm sure you've all heard of the Justice 40 initiative. One of the best things that Justice 40 did for us was it created this whole of government approach that said at least 40% of certain federal climate investments had to flow to historically overburdened communities and underinvested communities, what the feds call disadvantaged communities. In New Jersey, we may call them overburdened communities. In the 8 categories of climate change, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transit, health, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and clean water and wastewater. Next slide, please. So one thing I just really need everyone to understand, that Justice 40 only applies to certain programs, right? So there are many other dollars out there aside from the ones that Justice 40 would give us access to. So we need to have our minds and our eyes on the entire pot. Next slide, please. So how much money are we looking at now at this point through the bipartisan infrastructure law? $1.2 trillion. This is an unheard of investment in climate and infrastructure. And through the Inflation Reduction Act, we have $400 billion. And as you can see, some of these programs under the Inflation Reduction Act are ones that you will hear about today. And next slide, please. Is that the last slide? One more. And just as an example of how that money flows, a lot of us are seeing EPA dollars, but there are also HUD dollars, there are also DOE dollars. Some of our organizations are tapping into all of them in very creative ways. But through the EPA, for example, we have the Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grant Program, $2.8 billion. Which some of that is flowing into the community change grant that I know many of you were thinking about and talking about, and we hope to hear a lot more about today. Thanks, Sarah. So yes, that's just what I wanted to frame up for us all, just the magnitude of what we're looking at right now. Please, and the fact that we just don't want folks to be intimidated by this. We want folks to engage. So whatever we have to do to help get you all there, we're going to do our best. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Sarita Turner of Jumea Consulting, who is going to be our guide for the day, taking us through the day. Samaya, I'm sorry, Sarita.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Melissa. I really want to extend a thank you to the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, Environmental Justice for inviting me to join you today. And I want to thank all of the participants who are online for being scrappy and making the pivot and joining this morning in spite of the changes. This is going to be a dynamic day, half a day, and a lot of great information. And one of the things that I just wanted to double down on that I feel like Melissa lifted up is that all of this historic moment, these billions of dollars that the federal government has made available has been due to the legacy work that the environmental justice community, all of you and many others across this country have done. And it's your time to tap into what you fought for and recognize that it is your money to do all of the things and many more that you imagined for your communities to make them healthier, safer, cleaner, all of the things that again, you have fought for in this moment. So I get to be the person that helps navigate us through the day. And before we jump in to our next panel, or our first panel, actually, discussion, I want to bring Candace back up. She's going to go through some Zoom logistics and help us navigate the virtual space that we find ourselves in this morning. Candace, do you want to come on and walk through?
Yes, thank you to Sarita and Melissa for those additional points of framing and really giving those nuggets to set the tone for the day. So thank you for that. So a couple of housekeeping points and then we'll just move right along. So first, you've been automatically muted. And so that is not to silence you. We'll have some intentional points of Q&A and discussion throughout the day here. And so during those times, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. And then the team behind the scenes will unmute you to ask your question or say your comment out loud. Or you can feel free to put your question in the chat and we'll continue to monitor the chat throughout the day and address questions to the panelists as we go along. And so I see that people have been putting their name and where they're from in the chat. So thank you for all of you to do that. We're going to call that our virtual opportunity to do networking since we're not in person. So continue to introduce yourself if you haven't already. And if you look in the bottom towards the right hand of your Zoom controls, you're going to see a reactions button that looks like a smiley face. You just want to click on that and then click on raise hand. So raise hand is the function you want to click on to announce to yourself, announce to our team behind the scenes that you have a question that you want to ask, and then we'll call on you in order of folks that have raised their hands. So with that, I want to queue up a couple of polls for us. So we want to get to know you a bit better. We have some questions that we want to ask you. And so I'll ask Christina to launch our first poll. Okay, so you should see a very visible box on your screen. Just want to read the question and answer it and click submit. So on a scale of 1 to 5, please rank your confidence in accessing government funding sources. So how confident are you? Okay, and we'll just give it another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so queue up the results for us, Christina. Okay, so it seems like the majority of answers are saying somewhat unconfident. That 35% of our group here is feeling somewhat unconfident about how to access all these funding sources. So totally understandable. And we have a lot of information to hopefully make you feel a bit more confident after today. So let's go to our next question. Okay, question number 2. What is one barrier you faced when it comes to accessing funding? So any barriers that people want to let us know of? And while you're thinking of your answer, just want to make a quick note that people who are attempting to put their name and their introduction in the chat or even a question, to make sure that you have checked the option to send that message to everyone. It sounds like some people are directly messaging our Spanish interpreter, Katia. And so if you intend for that message to be seen by everyone, it needs to say everyone. You'll know that it says direct message because it'll have direct message in red in parentheses next to the message that you're sending. Okay, and so I'll just give you another 10 seconds to put in any barriers. Okay, and go for it, Christina. Okay, Christina, it doesn't look like we're seeing the results.
Give me just 1 second.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
No,
Yeah,
still not.
it's coming up for me, Candace.
Okay.
One answer, but maybe we can do that one again a little bit later in the break and give folks, once they've had time, an opportunity to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds good. Folks, also feel free to just put it in the chat, like any barriers or questions that you're struggling with, and hopefully we can address them and get to some of them throughout the day. So that sounds good. Let's move forward. One last thing I want to say as a housekeeping note is that we will share all of the slides that you're going to see today with you afterwards. So don't worry about furiously taking notes. We'll send the slides to you. And our presenters today have fact sheets and materials that are going to summarize some of what they're talking about. We'll also send that information out to you today following the presentation. So a lot to come at you in terms of follow-up, but let me pass it back to Sarita to take us through the first part of our agenda.
Thank you, Candace. So I just want to, before we jump in to the first panel, and Candace, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think the protocol for questions is raise your hand, and those questions will be answered first. And then we will go to the chat to pick up any additional questions that have come through the chat. But we really want to encourage you to participate verbally and see your faces and all that great stuff if you choose to participate that way. And so we're going to go to raise hands and kind of give people the opportunity to vocalize their questions directly. With that, this looks like it's going to be an amazing opportunity. Many folks are looking for support around federal processes. So I think, this is very timely. And we're going to first hear from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And They're going to talk about some of the funding opportunities directly. We're going to hear from Iris Crawford. She's a senior communications advisor for EPA Region 2. And we're also going to hear from Dave Klusner, I hope I'm saying that right, supervisor for the strategic programs and community funding of EPA Region 2. We're going to learn about a variety of federal environmental justice, funding and technical assistance opportunities. And the funding is really coming through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Both of those are big pieces of legislation that passed under this current administration. You probably heard a lot about them. The presentation that you're going to hear is going to highlight the unique differences between each of the programs and provide clarity on eligibility. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Iris and Dave to jump us into this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sarita. And I am going to share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see the presentation? Yes, okay, awesome. So thank you, NJDEP and Melissa, for inviting us to this wonderful day. We're also sorry that we couldn't make it to Atlantic City, but are here virtually. And so, yeah, so Dave and I are just going to go over some of the open funding opportunities, as there are a lot of them. Many have opened and closed, but we're just going to go over the most relevant ones that are open today. So as Melissa and Sarita had already mentioned, through the Biden-Harris administration, the Investing in America programs, we're providing historic funding opportunities to confront the climate crisis and reducing pollution. So we're just going to talk about some direct grants, subawards through various programs, and then most importantly, the technical assistance, which, as some folks noted in the chat, is a great need. So we're going to go over that as well.
So, excuse me, Iris, can you put it on start from the beginning so the
Yes.
presentation is bigger? Yeah, thank you.
Is that okay?
It hasn't hit yet. It's okay. Still on the, we can see all the slides. To the far left, it should be the from the beginning.
Okay, let me see. I didn't do it right. From the beginning. I'm gonna share it, but then I'm gonna do from beginning. Did that work?
It may still be loading. It's not there.
Okay.
Yet.
The full screen pops up. Not sure.
Perfect.
It's loading.
Perfect.
It's good. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well. Okay. So today we're just going to go over 4 opportunities, and that is the 2024 Clean School Bus Rebate Program, Greenhouse.
So Iris has frozen. Not sure what that means.
I think somebody may need to share her slide deck and allow her to not show her screen in order to keep the bandwidth for the technology.
Sure. I will. If I had, do I have sharing rights?
Yes, David, you have sharing rights now.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yeah. So I am very accustomed to the Teams platform, and I'm looking for the share screen. I found it. I found it.
It's right in the middle of the bottom row of options. It should be green.
Yes, and then I'm getting what to share on my
Think share window.
And make
So
sure
then
you
you
actually
pick
press
your
share, David.
green. Yeah.
Then
should
you
be
have
able
to
see the-
locate the screen with the slides on it
Yeah,
and click on that.
I could try it again, everyone, but yeah, it's saying my bandwidth is low. I wonder if my signal is being impacted by the heavy rain.
I can share. I have your slides.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Yeah, it's not working on my
Thank you,
end either.
Hannah. Okay, awesome.
Okay, can you see?
Yes, thank you. Okay, and you can go to the next one, Rihanna. And then the next one. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Technical difficulties. So we're gonna go over thank you, Jacqueline. So 4 open funding opportunities. So the 2024 Clean School Bus Rebate Program, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the EJ Thriving Communities Grantmakers Program, Fordham is with us today, and the Community Change Grants. And Rihanna, you can go to the next one. So there under the Clean School Bus Program, there are 2 programs. There's the grant program, Clean School Bus Grant Program, and then the Clean School Bus Rebate Program. So I'm going over the rebate program, and the reason that is because in 2024, there will be no grant program. It'll just be the rebate program. And so that gives EPA the ability to offer rebates to replace existing school buses with clean and zero emission models. And so the application processes are sort of similar in the beginning for both. So you would submit an application, and then EPA would notify you of your status, and then you would be able to know, like, okay, I'll be able to purchase buses, and then EPA would be able to reimburse me for them. So I hope that makes sense. In terms of who's eligible, it would be public school districts, tribal applicants, third parties, and local, state governmental entities. And all of these eligible parties should be providing school bus service to one or more public school systems, be able to purchase, lease, or license or contract school buses. So everyone who's applying should be doing those things. And I think what's important is that it's really cool that I think this program is being able to offer rebates, because for one, it's expensive. Some of these buses cost like, $20K to like $50K, super expensive. And so in terms of the kinds of buses that are eligible to be replaced, it depends on the model year, the weight, its operational capacity, and how many times a week it is servicing bus routes. So what the EPA would be able to give you rebates for are older diesel combustion engine buses, as well as some new electric buses. And you can learn all about the types of buses that are eligible for rebates. The only ones that have not been eligible last year, and I'm not sure about this year, it might be the same, is biofuel. So particularly for New Jersey, recently for the 2023 grant program, a third-party bus company called VanCon, they got 19 million, and we were able to celebrate with them a couple weeks ago with Senator Booker in Union City. And then in 2022, under the rebate program, the Bridgeton City School District was able to receive $790,000, and they were able to replace 2 school buses. So I hope folks can take advantage of this rebate program. I think it's really wonderful and great to be able to do. And And then Rihanna, you can go to the next slide. So the next thing that I'll talk about, and Melissa had also made reference to this, is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And there are two programs that I'm going to go over. The first one here is the National Clean Investment Fund. And then the other one on the other slide is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator. So for this one, the National Clean Investment Fund, it is $14 billion nationally, and it will give 2 to 3 national nonprofits, which are considered, which are supposed to be clean financing institutions, the ability to partner with the private sector to provide accessible, affordable financing for thousands of clean energy technology projects around the country. So in terms of who those national nonprofits are, that'll actually be announced this coming week, which is awesome. And we're hoping that we have someone in Region 2. And then in terms of who is eligible, that so essentially these national nonprofits will be able to provide financing to families, small businesses, communities, and many others to be able to access the capital that they need to install cost-saving and air pollution reducing, technology projects. And as Melissa had mentioned, 40% of this fund is flowing into Justice 40 communities. So all of the folks that I just mentioned that are eligible will be able to get these sub-awards. So think community microgrids, whatever that may be, to be able to finance these clean energy projects. So yeah, and Rihanna, you can go to the next slide. And then the second program, which I had mentioned, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator. So that is a $6 billion program. And all of the funds from this program will go towards Justice 40 communities. And that is a program that is for 2 to 7 hub nonprofits that will in turn deliver funding and technical assistance to local community lenders. So what are community lenders? That includes community development financial institutions, credit unions, green banks, housing finance agencies, minority depository institutions. And so what's great about this accelerator program is that the technical assistance and the funding are two key things that I hope folks will take advantage of. And these hub nonprofits, again, they will also be announced this coming week. We'll be able to provide sub-awards that will be able to help them build their capacity to help all of these eligible projects. So in terms of projects, what would the accelerator be able to fund? So they must fall within 7 categories. So climate change, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transportation, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation, reduction of legacy pollution, and the development of critical clean water infrastructure. So the interim implementation guidance for Justice 40 initiative, that's a link that NJDP will share, should be able to provide examples of who's eligible and so forth. So yeah. And more information, as I said, coming soon on both programs next week. And I also will say that, so for these 2 programs, just to make clear, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator and the National Clean Investment Fund, they will be in the form of, it's not a hierarchy, but yeah, it'll be the hub nonprofits and the national clean financing institutions that will be giving sub-awards and funding and technical assistance to, so they're like sub-awards to families, to financing institutions, all that type of stuff. So I hope that makes sense. So EPA, hub nonprofits, national financing institutions, and then folks on the ground. So I hope that makes sense. And you can go to the next slide, Hannah. And so we have some folks with us here today. We Act, which is our EJ Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. They're amazing. They have been so wonderful in many of the things that we've been doing already. And they are the folks that you need to go to for technical assistance. And then we also have Fordham University, who is our EJ Thriving Communities Grant Makers Program. And so they'll also explain how that program works, but it's also like a similar tiered thing where it's EPA, Fordham is getting funding, and then Fordham will award sub-awards to folks on the ground. So yeah, and then also, they also have a number of partners, both We Act and Fordham have a number of partners that they're working with to help you with technical assistance, and then for Fordham to help you with those sub-awards. So please utilize both things, and they are going to be working in tandem. So We Act will help folks with capacity building, all that type of stuff, and then refer folks to Fordham, but they'll explain that more in depth. And then Rihanna, you can go to the next slide. And now Dave is going to talk about the program that you all have been waiting for, the Community Change Grants. So Dave, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Iris, and it's a pleasure to be here. I see some familiar faces, and so that's exciting. Thank you to the organizers and the difficult decision that you had to make on this event, but safety is most important. So I'm David Pleaser, and I direct strategic programs and what we call community-based funding in a new organization. It's called the division that I work in is the Environmental Justice, Community Engagement, and Environmental Review Division. So for the first time in history, the agency created its own national program office. It's the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. This is exciting news, which basically means it had the OEJ-ECR, that office, that new office, is on the same footing as our air program, our water program, our land cleanup program. So that was exciting. What they also wanted to do is have a direct line of that national office directly to a division that had all of our 10 regions have stood up the new divisions to really focus on environmental justice, community engagement, and environmental review. So with that, I will go through some slides. We will have some time to answer questions after the presentation. Okay, next slide, Rihanna. All right, so there's $3 billion through the IRA. I think is it okay if I use IRA as a mouthful, Inflation Reduction Act? So IRA, you'll call IRA or IRA. Anyhow, $2.8 billion in grants, and $2 billion for the community change grants, and then $200 million for technical assistance. These grants cannot exceed 3 years. No extensions are allowed, and all grants must be awarded by September 30th of 2026. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is just a little about the process. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but going back into 2023, you see from February to April, there's some feedback. We consulted with NEJAC members March and July. April, there was 100 plus EPA work groups convened, staff from different programs, again, input on the notice of funding opportunities. And then, June to August, again, more outreach and input. We wanted to make sure this actually makes sense and not just, Washington making these decisions sort of in a vacuum. So that was exciting. And then in September and October, EPA staff worked on the draft notice of funding opportunity, and the climate change grant program began in November of 2023, and like I said before, it closes in a year from that, November 2024. Next slide, please. And a comprehensive approach: environment, people, communities. Essentially, it's just pulling all of those together in some very exciting ways. Next slide, please. Okay, community change grants. Here are the objectives: providing resources for community-driven projects, invest in strong cross-sectoral collaborations, empower communities, unlock access to resources. This is what we're here for. Strengthen community participation in government decision-making. Next slide, please. Eligible entities and statutory partnership. Okay, so community-based organizations are very important. They're actually a key to this moving forward. As you can see on the right hand of the screen, CBOs, there needs to be two entities, a CBO with another CBO, a CBO with a federally recognized tribe. In our region, New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, there are 8 federally recognized Indian nations in New York State. So we won't spend a lot of time on that today, unless there are specific questions on that. A CBO could also partner with a local government. They could also partner with an institution of higher education. So the applicants will have a lead applicant and a statutory partner. It is up to the applicants to decide who that lead applicant will be. We do not get involved in that. So the applications have to define the lead and the statutory partner. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, there's tracks, what they call tracks, sort of different pots of money, different tracks. Total of $2 billion. This is how it kind of works out. 1.96 billion in track 1. So the number of expected awards is approximately 150 awards, and those awards will be between $10 and $20 million each. The second track is $40 million, and this is meaningful engagement for equitable governance. The number of awards expected there are 20, and all of this is nationwide, right? The per award amount is 1 million to 3 million each. So you do not have to apply for more than one track. You can, and yeah, so you can apply for 2 tracks. You cannot apply for more than two grants under this program. Next slide, please. All right, the first track, the big enchilada here. The strategies, climate action, and you can just sort of go down the list, whether it's community resilience hubs, perhaps under this grant, a parcel of land could be purchased and a hub built on that land. And so you may, I could see where maybe South Jersey has a hub, perhaps one in Union or Essex County, and so forth, just to really focus on New Jersey primarily here. So there's a lot of things under that climate action strategy, and also then pollution reduction. You have to have both in your application, right? It has to address both climate action and pollution reduction, and whether that's clean water, hazardous waste management, indoor air quality, and so forth. Okay, and sorry, that was actually my time up, but we're gonna hopefully, Sarita, I can still have a little more time before we get to the Q's and A's. Next slide, please.
So yes, please finish the presentation, and then I have a strategy for how we'll navigate Q&A to help make up some time.
All right. I don't have much more here. Again, as I mentioned, track 2, some of the project examples are listed here. And again, this presentation will be shared with everybody. So no need for massive note taking. So next slide, please. There's something called target investment areas. As you can see here on the slide, 50 million for disadvantaged unincorporated communities, 150 million for tribes in Alaska, 300 million for tribal communities. These are lower 48 states plus Hawaii. There's more than 400 and so federally recognized tribes and nations around the country. So that's why you're seeing a big chunk there. Border communities, 100 million, US territories, 50 million. So basically, I mean, if you're adding this up, it adds up to about 650 million out of that track one fund. So these are sort of some of the priority areas, but most of the money will be spent, you know, it just spread out in disadvantaged communities across the nation. All right, next slide. So there is a rolling application timeline. November it opened, applications were accepted and were reviewed. We're hopeful that in sometime in this month, in March, it may slip a little bit, that we'll have the first round of awards. But there will be multiple rounds of reviews and awards through the process. So again, the critical date here is the application close date, keeping an eye on that. And like I said, the actual project needs to get off the ground before 2026, and it'll be a 3-year project period. Whether you can get the money in March or in July or whenever, each project has a 3-year time span. So some of these 2026 projects could go through 2029. All right, next slide. Technical assistance. This is I'm so excited. This has been needed for so long. I've been in the EJ grant space many years ago, and I saw so many great organizations with what I thought these are great projects, but they did not have a professional grant writer on staff, or they missed the words. You know, there's key words you need to put in your application. And it's so frustrating for the grant applicant and frustrating for EPA to say you are deemed ineligible. And so this technical assistance is designed to minimize the number of those, to really assist pre-award and as well as post-award. All right, so there are 2 TA programs. Iris will take the first one. Next slide.
Thank you, Dave. So the first one is the Community Change Technical Assistance. And so this, as Dave just said, is helpful for pre-award and post-award. You can apply, applicants can apply for both. So it helps with grant application support. So developing, preparing, and submitting a grant application, and will address any eligibility issues. It'll also go into help you with project planning and development. So preparing project map, designs, developing your budgets, schedules, budgets, once again, all those types of things. It'll also help you with outreach and engagement. So this includes technical assistance support in conducting community outreach and developing community engagement plans. And then lastly, technical assistance will also help you with general capacity building. So support in developing partnerships and governance structures. So they're essentially, these are the 4 key steps on how to do it. You get on our EPA website, Community Change Grants, find the intake form, submit the form. EPA will determine your eligibility, or you can call the 1-800 number to make a request or ask any questions, or email at ej_techassist@epa.gov. And then grant will, we will, talk to you about any grants, talk to you about, any issues, all of that. So please utilize it. And then Dave, I'll turn it back to you to talk about the particular one, the CCERTA.
The next slide. All right, this is a more focused form of technical assistance. Really, really should focus on disaster-prone communities, up to 50 communities nationwide. For this particular focused technical assistance, for what we call regions 1, 2, and 3, which is Maine down through Philly and then Virginia and other areas. It's sort of the Northeast region. There are 11 that we have been given. Right now, our region has 5 that have been selected for TA for disaster-prone areas, whether it's floods, fires, or so forth. And so we are looking, we have 2 in the New York City area, and then we have 3 in Puerto Rico, and we have none in New Jersey. So if anyone is interested, we would like to see someone apply for TA in New Jersey. That would be awesome. So it's a place-based design assistance. It must show intent and eligibility to apply for a community change grant and agree to host EPA contractors for site visits. And the EPA TA can offer some architectural, engineering, landscape support, etc. So very focused. EPA has a very sort of a minimal role here. It's a call, it's a site visit, and a little bit of follow-up, but then our contractors take over and work with that organization. Okay, next slide. All right, we're just about done. There's a lot of information here to keep up with. The frequently asked questions, they're 37 pages long. Now, don't let that daunt you. So I'll put the link in the chat. 30, and it's fairly well written, and it answers a lot of questions. And so, and written in a language that I think is about as plain language as you can get in the grant space. So FAQs, webinars, specific questions, there's information there. And again, you'll have the slide deck. And I believe the next slide is the last slide. Nope, that was the last slide. So with that, I thank you for your patience and with technical difficulties on my end as well, and Iris, but hey, we're here. So, Sarita?
Yes, thank you, Iris and Dave. Such a critical wealth of information. And I did put the link in the chat to the Community Change Grant webpage. So if folks want to sign up for technical assistance, access the FAQ, all those kinds of things, you can go to that link and provide some of that information. Okay, so what we're going to do, and yes, the presentations will be sent out after the convening. Shortly after the convening, all this information will be compiled and sent out to you all so that you have the slides and that information as well. So we were going to do a quick Q&A after this panel. To make up some time, what we're going to do is jump right into the We Act Thriving Communities Technical Assistance presentation with Sarah Salem, the TIC-TAC Director of Community Engagement with We Act, and Shireen Cox, the TIC-TAC Grant Specialist with We Act. And then after their presentation, there was going to be a break and a little bit more Q&A. So we're going to combine that together with Candace also sharing some polls, I think. And so we'll be able to kind of roll the break and the Q&A and those pieces together. But right now we want to hear from We Act about the New York and New Jersey TIC-TAC that will help underserved communities gain access to grant funding opportunities so that they are better positioned to advance and address environmental, climate, and energy justice issues. So I just want to hand it right over to Sarah and Shireen so they can give you some amazing information, and then we'll jump into some Q&A. So don't forget to be raising your hands.
Awesome. Thank you all. I think we just need sharing capabilities and then we'll move up back in. Awesome. All right. Let me know if y'all are seeing my screen.
We are, Sarah, but you're sounding a little bit muffled.
Oh, okay. Let me check my audio. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I know some of you are experiencing some connectivity issues, so bear with us. We are as well. And I do want to thank NJEJA and NJDEP for just being really thoughtful about the safety of all of us. We would have loved to be there in person, and definitely the next time there is an in-person opportunity, we will be there. So before we jump in, I'd like to just explain who We Act is. We're Probably some of you might know about WEACT, some of you might not, but WEACT started in 1988 as an EJ, a bunch of organizers trying to deal with environmental justice issues here in Harlem. And since then has been really at the forefront of the New York policy and now federal policy in promoting and pushing for EJ, and has been led by some really great living ancestors in terms of folks who've been part of the EJ movement. So Miss Peggy Shepard and some other folks who even helped establish the environmental justice principles as well. So we're really excited to be supporting the New Jersey group and the state of New Jersey. And we have some great partners in Jersey who build our WEACT Tic Tac. So you'll see on this slide, you see us. We're also partnered for the Tic Tac, which we'll talk about what the Tic Tac is, with the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, also SWEA, the South Ward Environmental Alliance as well, Columbia Climate School, the Clean Energy Group, our partners down in Puerto Rico, Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and lastly, the NYU Institution for Policy Integrity. So I'm joined today by my colleague, Shireen Cox, and I'm Sada Salem, she, her, hers pronouns. And we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about what the Tic Tac is and how to take advantage of us and what services we can provide. So just a little bit of background. Ms. Melissa gave a really good background on what the Justice 40 initiative was, and that's actually what funds this program. So Justice 40 initiative launched through an executive order from the Biden administration for the 40% of overall benefits of the federal funding to go to underserved, marginalized communities. Excuse me. And the Tic Tac program was really built out of a call from community that even if this funding came down, community might not be ready for it. And that's because, as Melissa kind of gave to a little bit in her opening, these federal grants are pretty complicated and they can be an administrative burden. If you're not ready for it, it could be something that is not great for your organization. And really, how do we build the ability to engage with these federal grants in a way that is useful to community, that actually gets the projects they need and builds capacity to engage? So that's thinking about everything from your indirect costs to how do you write a grant, to how do you properly staff your team to be doing this work. And so that's what the Tic Tacs are meant to do. The United States is broken up into 10 regions, and we in New York and New Jersey sit in Region 2. That also includes our friends down in Puerto Rico and USVI. And for the purposes of the Tic Tac, there are 2 awarded Tic Tac leads. So us at WEACT with our partners are overseeing the New York, New Jersey region. And then the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico is overseeing Puerto Rico and USVI. And that makes sense. You got to live, work, and play in the communities you want to serve. And so we're really excited to be partnering with folks in New Jersey and in New York to ensure that we are listening to community and building what community wants. So the period, it's really important to know that Tic Tac does not give out money. We don't have money. What we give out is free services. It's a 5-year grant, so we'll be around hopefully longer than 5 years. But what it means is that for 5 years, we're going to be building training services for the New York, New Jersey region to help them with not just federal grants, but state grants, local grants, philanthropic grants, helping folks connect with partners to get the projects that they want in their community. Our team currently is developed of our partners and staffed fully by 3 staff members, myself, the Director of Community Engagement. We have a Director of Operations, Jordana Vandersel, who's not with us, and then our Federal Grant Specialist, Ms. Shireen Cox, who you'll be hearing from later. We also are serving 8 tribal nations in the New York region that are federally recognized, but I do want to want you all to know that we do serve any tribal communities, but it is important to know that the federal ones are the ones that can use their tribal status to get these grants, but we will serve any tribal communities, both state recognized as well. So we're not limiting ourselves. And our main focuses are curriculum with monthly trainings, on-demand technical assistance, a resource library, and a cohort and in-person annual convening. This all has kind of changed a little bit over the last couple of months as we're really in the process of having the rubber meet the road, and we're trying to be more intentional. So we are going to be rolling out our cohort design, which is probably going to be more of an outreach function, and identifying community-based organizations, both in the New York and New Jersey region, to really serve as furthering our hub and spoke model to make sure that we're really able to provide more in-person opportunities versus virtual. We're aware that there's a large diversity in both states, both in the rural and the more dense regions, but also in language and community types. And we really want to make sure we're responsive to that, also responding to language needs, ability needs, all of that. So look out for more information around that. I just wanted to reiterate our purpose. So grant assistance is the #1, is helping folks understand the grants they're interested in. We have a bunch of grants that we're paying attention to, and previously the EPA did a great job of going through some of the EPA grants. So we actually quickly scratched that so we didn't repeat information that you guys already had. But if there's a grant you're interested in that we don't even have on our website, bring it to us. Shireen comes with 20 years of federal grant experience, and we'll look at that grant and help you navigate how to go through that grant. Worth saying, we can't write your grant, but we can review it, we can edit it, we can make sure you understand the grant. Also, community engagement is a big component. So we're going to be out there pretty soon. You'll find me knocking on your doors and being in person in your community events, because I hold very true that I don't know anything. And it's really my job to listen and amplify the voices and the needs of the communities we're serving. And we want to make sure we center accessibility. So currently, because we're in our first year of development, things have been virtual, but we don't intend to make that the cornerstone of our work. And so we do plan to have more in-person opportunities, really meeting community where they're at. And our primary technical assistant areas that we're focusing on, again, is navigating and applying to grants. So if you have a grant you're interested in, or one that you've seen on the website, we'll go through our intake later, but you can send it to us and we will help you understand that grant and help you determine if you should be applying for that grant. Also, we want to support with building partnerships. So especially if you have projects that are brick and mortar, or maybe you want to do a solar farm in your community, or you want to do some sort of real intense programming, we want to connect you with the right partners. We want to connect you with good partners, contractors who are not going to be extractive, get you to work with educators, for example. Also, we want to unfuzzy or demystify environmental justice policy and regulatory analytics, and our partners at NYU, this is really something they're very passionate about. Connecting EJ groups to academic partners, working on energy justice and energy projects, understanding what is EJ. Environmental justice is, sometimes jargon, and many communities are enduring inequities and might not recognize or know that they're actually dealing with injustice in their community. And so really giving language to give power, to give the ability to change programming or issues in your community. Doing a needs assessment of your environmental justice issues, and again, grants management. So hopefully you get that grant and then we can help you manage that grant, depending especially on where it's coming from, if it's a federal grant or a state grant or so on. And I'm going to talk through some of the stuff we've done thus far that you can find on our website. So some previous trainings we've had is SWIA led in environmental justice and community organizing training at the end of March. That was really fantastic, led by Ms. Kim. And it was an amazing opportunity to learn about what does it mean to be in community? How do you do one-on-one grassroots work? How do you organize your community to be the advocates for what they know is best for their community? Often we see the cycle of folks who aren't from the community creating solutions for the community that don't make any sense and aren't taken up because they weren't built by the people who know what's right for the community. And so that was a really great presentation. All of our presentations sit on our website and you can watch them. We also had a training of the CGES tool. So this is a really, really important tool created by the EPA that is going to be utilized to help in your grants to help identify that your community is dealing with environmental justice issues. And our partners at NYU walked through how to utilize that tool and also how to articulate what you learned from that tool in your grants. And that's also stored on our website. And then our clean energy group was our first to launch in December, and they did a presentation around community solar focusing on the New Jersey, New York region. So those are just some of the trainings we've done thus far. Some upcoming trainings we have this Tuesday, the 26th. Ms. Melissa will be leading an organizational growth, building a sustainable future for your organization with some great panelists. We do encourage you guys to join. It is free. It's 6 to 7 p.m. We also have regular trainings that are coming from our partners at the Environmental Protection Network around how to register for SAM.gov. Those are every 2 weeks. So if you can imagine, they go into May and June and so on, and they're every 2 weeks. And they're office hours. So they really take you through the SAM.gov website and make sure you're comfortable and have registered properly. We also have our environmental health and justice leadership training that will be happening on April 30th to talk about EJ issues, really a ground setting. And then we are working on, and I'll pass it to Shireen to talk a little bit more, our grant writing trainings.
Yeah, we're in the process of finalizing our grants writing training series, and we're just trying to work out the timeline. So it's going to be focused on really the process of writing your grant from beginning to end, from telling your story to talking about your project, and then also how to create a great evaluation plan on to discuss how you're going to measure your successes. So it goes from telling the story all the way through to sharing how you're going to share your report on your success from the grant. So I think it'll be very informative. We just need to work out the launch timeline. So keep an eye out for that. Sana.
The next slide's yours.
Oh, sorry. So the EPA talked about the community change grant and the resources on that they're providing for the for technical assistance. We have just been providing assistance to folks also to help determine if this funding opportunity is a good fit for your organization. So feel free to reach out to us, and if you're just thinking about it, and we can help you decide. And the next slide.
How to connect with us. So we have put our QR codes here for you all. We encourage you all to scan them, and we'll also drop all the links. So there's the technical assistance request, which I'll talk about in the next slide about what that experience would be for you. Also find out about our upcoming training opportunities, learn about upcoming funding. We are curating a lot of our resources to be very thoughtful. But again, if we don't have trainings, or sorry, if we don't have grants that you're interested in or ones that you feel are a good fit, let us know and we'll look for you and we can connect you to the right grants you might need. And then we have a bi-weekly newsletter as well. So please do stay informed with that. And so just to talk a little bit more about the technical assistance, how that experience is, when you go to our website or you utilize this QR code, you'll get a document here that's a quick Google form. Shouldn't take you more than, honestly, 3 to 5 minutes, if even. It's very short. Once we receive that, we review those weekly, and then we'll send an invite to have a 30-minute intake call with us. It'll be with myself or Jordana or both. And what we try to find out is what you need. And the more you put in your description, the better, because then we can connect you more quickly with the resources you need. And then we'll send you a follow-up based on the conversation. And we do really want to have a one-on-one opportunity with you all, learn more about your needs. And so we do think that face-to-face opportunity is super important. And I also will just say we're building still. So do bear witness that we are trying to build something that's useful, and we have luckily a little bit of time with a 5-year span to build something very useful in our technical assistance centers. But we are very excited to be serving the New Jersey community and look forward to hearing from you. And we hope we met the time you guys needed, because we just had questions for y'all to ask us. So we can stop there.
Thank you so much for all that great information and all the work that you all are doing at WEAC to make sure that folks are connected to these federal opportunities, and that intended communities benefit from them. I want to invite, I can't see hands raised, so I think one of our colleagues here on the call is navigating that. But I want to invite all the panelists from, so Iris and Dave and Shireen and Sarah to take questions right now. We have a little bit of time. And so if folks have questions about community change grants, any of the information that has been presented since we got started, let's take those questions now.
Great.
I see
Sounds
that.
good. And
Okay,
Sarah,
Candace, you're gonna manage the Q&A?
yes.
Thank you.
And Sarah, there we go. Stop sharing. All right, so Betty Crockett is up first. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yes, my question is about the community change grants. Anywhere in that grant that land can be purchased to do environmental work, whether it's establishing a botanical garden or, you know, or
Yes,
orchard.
the answer is yes. Land purchase is allowed.
Okay.
And it should be described in the notice of funding opportunity. That is the go-to place in terms of what could be allowed. And then those frequently asked questions that I mentioned, that link is on the link that was posted previously on the general EPA IRA Community Change Grant webpage. So yeah, land purchase is acceptable.
Okay.
Thanks, Betty. We'll go over to Jacqueline Bido next.
Greetings, I'm Jacqueline Beto. I wanted to know, based on my experience working with a lot of nonprofit organizations, I found that when it came to municipality or institutional collaboration for RFPs that are put out, there have been sometimes obstacles or many closed doors in even getting a meeting with stakeholders. How do these entities support initiating a conversation with municipalities or institutions of learning? Because I found that is a large impasse for many nonprofit organizations that are doing the work on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So under the Track 2 Community Change Grant, that is directed, focused on basically, engagement with others. It's let me just look at my notes here real quick. Yeah. So that is really the Track 2 applicants, and really it's for engaging the community, engaging local governments, engaging state legislative bodies, municipalities, the wide gamut of that. So I hope that answered your question.
And I'll contribute to that question, at least for the TikTok. What we're trying to do is really connect with those. So I also got a question around how you can be a partner. So reach out to us. We're doing the due diligence on our back end of working with institutions and working with municipalities. So we have you can think about it as two components to the work, where we're trying to find good partners for the projects we're learning about and play that in between and connect folks. So obviously that's a big burden sometimes for community-based organizations, and also community-based organizations can sometimes be at the receiving end of a very predatory collaboration, and we want to prevent that. So part of our intent, and it's something we're building, so I won't say like we have it all built out right now, is one, meeting with potential partners, learning about their abilities, whether that's municipalities, contractors, academic institutions, and playing that in between to ensure that they're properly ready to partner with CBOs, but also ensuring that CBOs feel ready and equipped to have those partnerships, that they don't feel that they're going to be taken advantage of. And so for us at the TikToks, that is a cornerstone of our work, is to kind of help build that gap. I'll continue to say we're still building it out, but we have already started that process where we're meeting with different legislators, we're meeting with municipalities, we're meeting with mayor's offices, we're meeting with contractors who are interested, we're meeting with different academic leaders as well. And we're trying to do our best to be that buffer to help with that connection and ensure that connection is a thoughtful and thorough one, and that is not extractive and predatory to community-based organizations.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
I also wanted to say, Jacqueline, I'm about to put the actual NOFO link. And if you go to page 19, as Dave said, track 2, it gives you a little bit more info on the track 2 in terms of engaging with government entities. So I hope that's helpful. Here's the NOFO page 19, so you can read it more closely. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and one other sort of follow up. There was a question in the chat about under track 2, is media allowed? I wasn't quite sure what media meant. I presume it might be, doing, outreach engagement through use of various forms of media. I would have to check back on that, but I think that could be under the umbrella of overall engagement and outreach to ensure that future webinars or information is disseminated broadly. The one restriction under track 2, participating in state legislative campaigns, is not allowed. That is considered a lobbying activity, but all the rest of facilitating engagement, building capacity, and advocacy, that is allowed.
Okay, Anna Barcy is next.
Hi, thanks for having me. I represent the org New Labor, so we do a lot of organizing of migrant workers, mostly from across the Latin American diaspora. And I noticed that you mentioned consideration for particular, I imagine, geographic areas that are plagued by climate change. However, a lot of what we're writing to and trying to highlight is the fact that our members, though they are plagued by climate change in their neighborhoods, right? They are living in highly populous places where they're experiencing environmental racism. They're also being trucked out all over the state, right? For disaster cleanup, and they're doing work as day laborers, temp agency workers. They're very invisibilized workforce that actually bears the brunt of a lot of the climate disaster, right? Dislodged asbestos, everything. They're the people who are cleaning that up and never being asked questions. And so I guess I'm wondering, could there be consideration? This is where I get a little abstract, I'm sorry, but spatially, for this idea of it not just being about a geographic location, one that's at risk for flooding or at risk for, the erosion of the beaches, but a community that, because it moves, is always on the front lines of climate disaster because of the way they are placed. Yeah.
And before, I just want to jump in really quickly before you answer that question. That will need to be our last question for the time being. We're going to have more time later, but we're going to get the answer to that question. Then Candace is going to put a poll up, and we want to give everybody a quick break, and we'll come back and have our next panel, our next segment at 11:35. Thank you.
Just real quick on that answer on farm workers, farmers, migrant farm workers, that is specifically mentioned in the notice of funding opportunity. It's also in the FAQ. So while all funds have to benefit, a disadvantaged community, the organization does not have to actually be in a disadvantaged community, but it has to benefit a disadvantaged community. And so farm workers, farm associations is included under this NOFO.
David, these are not farm workers. These are day laborers.
Associations.
who perform
There are people, I'm sorry,
disaster
there are
work.
people, they might live in like New Brunswick, but they are
Yeah.
going to the Jersey Shore, right? They're being
Right.
trucked out to climate disaster prone areas. And so I would want to write about that population rather than the geography. That's all I'm asking is like, is that all right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay.
That
Thank
should be fine, yeah.
Great, thank you. So sorry to be a little pushy, but we're gonna try to get our agenda back on the right timing. And so right now, Candace has a poll or two that she's gonna put forward. Then as soon as the polls are done, please take a break and be ready to get started again at 11:35. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarita. So a little bit of a pivot because we had some technical difficulties with our last poll earlier. But thanks so much to everyone that put their barriers in the chat. So I've summarized them and I just want to read them out, particularly for the awareness and the edification of our EPA colleagues and our TIC colleagues, because you guys are the ones who are putting together grant programs and administering pieces of technical assistance. And so these barriers should be helpful to you as you do that in the future. So one is not knowing the funding is available until a week before the deadline, that the match is high, reimbursement basis is impossible, and long time frames and huge upfront costs to even apply. Another is when the funding via the RFP requires a municipality to apply, there are limited avenues on how to begin the collaboration. For communities that are not English speakers, many of the RFPs nor their announcements are provided in other languages for an inclusive application pool. The technical assistance workshops engage all stakeholders as if they're all on the same level of expertise in submitting grants, which creates a gap during the presentation. There is a current need for clarity among stakeholders on restricted and unrestricted fund use in the application to budget development. And so we'll follow up with the presenters to share that, but wanted to lift up and highlight some of those barriers you raised, and thank you for sharing them with us.
All right, folks, thank you. Those are some really critical issues that have been lifted up. Thank you for your candor in lifting them up. And let's go ahead and take a break until 11:35. We're going to get started right at 11:35. Thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back. We are about to jump right into another moment that you've all been waiting for. This is another unprecedented move by the administration to actually address a lot of the things you all have been bringing up, which is how do we actually get the money to the communities that don't have all this federal access, meeting the requirements, having the capacity to deliver in the way that the federal government has been structured in the past. So we're gonna now pivot to a conversation with the EPA Region 2 Environmental Justice Thriving Communities grant maker, which is Fordham University. Fordham has received a $50 million grant from the EPA to serve as a pass-through entity. That means making subawards to community-based organizations, community-focused efforts. The Thriving Communities program will provide those subgrants in a way that aims to alleviate much of the burden that the federal grants process has placed on small, resource-constrained communities and marginalized populations in the past. And so I'm going to bring up now Fordham University and welcome them to share more about their work and how they are approaching their grant maker role.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction. If I can please get sharing rights, that will be very much appreciated. And while we get that, just to contextualize the conversations, and once again, thank you to the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance for the invitation. Before we get started, and just with the intention of sort of contextualizing, we are currently in the process of building up the grantmaker apparatus. So specifically, this presentation is going to be more with the intention of folks to get to know who are the folks behind the grantmaker apparatus. What is going to be the governance structure? We are going to share some information that is already made available by the EPA. As we're currently undergoing the negotiation phase, nothing is final yet, specifically the guidelines, dates, and I know that that is key for a lot of the organizations that are looking to apply for different funding opportunities. So I want to make sure that whatever information we share with you is final, is accurate. So please bear with me that information is not going to be included in this presentation, but you will know how is that we are approaching and how is that we want to make sure that this is a participatory process. Just a note, because Region 2 is a multilingual region, we want to make sure, or at least this presentation is in Spanish and English. So specifically for those that are listening to interpretation, the slides you're going to be able to see in both Spanish and English. So please bear with me. It's going to feel a little bit longer, but it's with the intention of making sure that everybody is able to read the same information. I am joined today, and honestly, it is a delight to be joined by Amy Torres, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. You'll know why is that I really value the partnership. I am also joined by Aditi. Aditi is our Flourishing in Community student ambassador, who's going to be supporting a lot of the operation, and specifically Aditi, folks from Amy's team or myself will be more than happy to join you if you have any events happening. So to give you a little bit of context, we name our grantmaker Flourishing in Community, or Floreciendo en Comunidad. And the reason why we name it that way, we actually this came from the work of a collective called Fordham Community. So we actually played with the name and the acronym and call it FIC. So we're currently the selectee for Region 2. Just to remind everyone, Region 2 includes New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And specifically thinking of the diversity of the region, we want to make sure that or the logic that led in the making of the proposal was to make sure that this was accessible from a language point of view, and we will talk about how that is going to look like. That is also accessible from a geographic point of view, understanding that our states are very diverse. Some areas are more inaccessible than others via public transportation, as well as organizational capacity. As I said earlier, we are building up the grantmaker apparatus. So this is a perfect time for us to engage in this conversation, because we want to make sure that any limitations, any challenges that we have already identified, those are taken into consideration as we continue to build up the grantmaker apparatus. So just to give you a little bit of context, we are very proud. We are a Bronx institution, and specifically bringing and guiding these funds from the Bronx is something that we take great pride. This funding is specifically guided by the Center for Community Engaged Learning. We are a center that uses an asset-based community development approach as well as a place-based. So that's why when we created this the narrative for the grant, it was specifically supported and guided by our Fordham community members. I just swapped the entire, see the language piece is interesting. You just got Spanish and English and the two. So the team, at least at Fordham University, guiding the grantmaker, is Dr. Julie Gaffney, my colleague, and myself. We both play different roles. I play more of an external facing role. Julie specifically leads everything that has to do with administration. The actual portion of the writing the grant, she took much of the work that had to do with writing the grant. And we are available if you have any questions, or if you want to specifically share any thoughts about how is that this grant maker should be rolled out. So, and this will probably clarify some of the questions that folks may have. So although is Fordham University the entity providing the institutional capacity to run the grant maker apparatus, the selection making process is going to actually be done by a community leadership board. That community leadership board is representative of the entire region. And is it gives equal representation to New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have only appointed the chair of the community board. We welcome specifically to make sure that the folks making decisions are folks that understand the local challenges and specifically the priorities that different communities have. I encourage anyone that if you have or would like to suggest someone to be considered for the community board, to please send those my way. I'll share my contact information later. But please, it is intended to be participatory and at the same time representative of the diversity of our region. So Wanda Salaman, and just to give you a little bit of context, Wanda Salaman is the executive director of Mothers on the Move. Wanda Salaman has collaborated with many higher education institutions, and we see this as a strategic partnership because with the experience that Wanda have had, she has been able to leverage the resources that higher educations have while being guided by community groups. And our intention is to work in partnership to make sure that the work, the decisions, and the priorities that this grant maker follows are specifically guided by community voices. So we have our support team, and starting with New Jersey. We have the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. As I said, we're joined by Amy Torres. The New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice will serve as one of our statutory partners. And the reason why we are so proud of the partnership, and we thank them for allowing us to work in partnership, is because we want to make sure that this grant is accessible not only to English-speaking communities, but understanding the diversity of our states. One of the things that we make sure we included in the narrative, and the only reason I'm only referring to a narrative is because that is until we finalize the negotiation phase, we will have more concrete information. One of the things that we proposed was to make the grant materials accessible in the top 10 languages of New York and New Jersey. So we are looking forward to our partnership, and specifically to make sure that this the grant the application and all the resources that are made available are accessible to the different communities that we serve. And I'm sharing how this looks like for the entire region. In New York City, we have partner, and again, we take great pride of our partnerships. We have partnered with the New York Immigration Coalition. They're going to be supporting the rollout of the operation in New York. As you see here, you're only seeing the executive directors. There will be a person once the grant maker apparatus is rolled out, that will be the point of contact for anything that has to do with the grant maker. In Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, we have partnered with Comprometidos. led by Isabel Rujan, they already have identified the team that is going to be supporting the work there. So that's why you see here that there are other folks already working in the grant maker. And then we have two advisory partners. They specifically requested to serve as advisory partners only because of capacity limitations, but they're going to be supporting directly the way in which we rolled out the grant maker. We have partnered in the U.S. Virgin Islands with the Community Foundation of the Virgin Islands, and in New York with the Business Initiative Corporation of New York. So about the grant, and I know that a lot of the information that I'm going to be sharing sounds repetitive because this grant is also funded by the Inflation Reduction Act. There are 11 selectees of whom are going to receive 50 millions, 40 of which are going to pass throughs and are meant to go to organizations. I'll share later what type of organizations are eligible. There are different buckets of money, those you see to your right. So we have $75,000, which are intended to be non-competitive. And when we say non-competitive is those are those we are expecting to be very simple applications that organizations can easily apply to, specifically understanding the challenges that sometimes organizations have in filling out or applying for grant opportunities. The other three are competitive opportunities, and this is specifically language that we have obtained from the EPA, because they have identified sort of like the project stages that each of these funding buckets are meant for. So the $150,000 is meant to go for a planning stage or planning phase project. This is mostly for data collection and data analysis, mostly with the intention of understanding the problem. The $250,000 is for projects that are in the phase of project validation. So this is to create capacity once the problem is understood, and the preparation to launch a project. And then the $350,000, it is intended to expand programs and create a new focus for a project that is ready for execution. This is actually those that people call shovel ready type of projects. So those are the $350,000 phase. Just one note, this is a 3-year duration grant. At least what we had proposed is to be accepting applications on a rolling basis, with the goal of having at least 2 to 3 evaluation cycles every year. But that is something that is going to be contingent to what is finally approved by the EPA. And I know that this is the same slide, but specifically for folks that are reading this or are listening in Spanish, this is the slide that sort of describes what I just mentioned in English. So in terms of eligible entities, and again, this is language from the EPA. So it is nonprofit organizations, community organizations, CBOs, civic and philanthropic organizations with nonprofit status, tribal governments, Native American organizations, and local governments. Once again, this is specifically in Spanish, exactly the same slide as we had before. So these are some potential projects that we have identified specifically based on the interpretation of the areas of priority that the EPA has delineated. So we have workforce development and student success to support the green economy, capacity building for grassroots community organizations and other organizations, public and environmental health with special emphasis on earth quality and its short and long-term impacts, projects that promote affordable and sustainable housing, food security, racial justice, and financial security, recovery, coastal resilience, and community participatory housing, or what is known as managed retreat, community access and green revitalization of green spaces, waterways, and underutilized areas. So once again, this is exactly the same slide, but we have it in Spanish here for the benefit of those that are reading this in Spanish. So this is a continuation of potential projects, transition to clean and renewable energy sources, biodiversity and conservation, sustainable transportation, infrastructure and design, agriculture, food system, and sustainable ways of eating. Again, this is in Spanish for the benefit of those that are reading this in Spanish. So we have coming up a summit. This is the second iteration of it. Actually, our first summit last year actually informed the way in which we approach the grant. That's why one of the things that we prioritize, and we were very intentional about the way that we approach the grant, was accessibility. So that's why the focus and the priorities that we want to make sure that we sort of deliver is specifically access from a point of view of organization capacity, language, and geographical access. We have our Climate Action Summit this April 8th. We will have we are celebrating this day. We have like a short media event where we're going to celebrate us being the selectee of the grant, but also the summit starts at 11 in the morning. If you want to partner, if you want to uplift the work that you're doing, you're more than invited. You can find out more information going to fordham.edu/climate-action-24. And then my contact information, the top number is my cell phone number. This is my email. You can also, and I encourage everyone, if you're interested in staying updated in terms of any information about the grant, you can go to www.fordham.edu/FIC. There you can include your information. And then we also have office hours every Thursday. Office hours in English are at 11 in the morning. You can follow the bit.ly, and all of this is in the one pager that you will soon receive, but just in case, in Spanish, we have office hours at noon. And then for volunteer organizations that probably cannot do the regular business hours, we are holding bilingual office hours at 6 p.m. And this is the fact sheet that you will find. I would believe that folks may have dropped the fact sheet in the chat box, but if not, this is something that you will receive in the package of information that you'll get later. And with that, I'm gonna pause. And if anyone have any questions, I'll let the folks managing the meeting sort of help me navigate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. A lot of great, rich information. And I know people have been anticipating, understanding how the Grant Makers program will work and how to tap into it. So we have until, let's see, let me make sure I'm giving the right information. We have until noon for some Q&A. And also for the Grant Makers program, but also feel free if you still have questions about the previous programs that were discussed to continue those questions coming as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Candace to manage the Q&A until noon.
Thanks, Nastasia Harris. I think your hand up might still be up from the last session, but feel free to go for it.
Hi, yes, I have a question about, I guess maybe it's technical support. So our organization is a maternal health focused organization specifically around Black maternal health and the crisis. And we know that there's a connection to the environment and preterm birth and preeclampsia rates, et cetera. So I'm wondering if there are opportunities for thought partnership as far as developing a proposal. Our organization doesn't see ourselves as the one doing the environmental work, more maybe calling for the work that needs to be done to protect our families, and trying to take the research and apply it to the environmental justice space has been somewhat of a challenge for us. And so I'm wondering if there's any support in actually farming out an idea for an application.
I can take this from the We Act TikTok and to start us off, if that's all right. So one of our contributors and people who can help is our Director of Environmental Health, and that might be a good starting point, is both bringing that lead from our organization along with our federal grants specialist Shireen to kind of think through what are some ways in which you can show up and pursue these projects. One thing that comes to mind for me is using the research and data to contribute as a factor towards a project that would help reduce the environmental impacts that are causing the maternal issues that you're talking about. So we would welcome you to reach out to us. Our Director of Environmental Health, this is exactly the type of work that she is paying attention to, is like all environmental impacts that are affecting everything from asthma rates to maternal and infant health as well. So I do think we have the capacity to support you and help you think through those and find the kind of intersection of how that makes sense within the environmental justice work, and also be able to articulate that in opportunities for grants. And
Okay,
apologies, I'm on my phone now because the internet really just took a dive for me.
thanks, Sarah. So Jacqueline, we just have 1 minute left. If you want to give us a really quick question, maybe we can get you a really quick answer.
I wanted to offer support to Ms. Harris. I'm going to drop the information for Tobias Fox. We are currently doing a doula nutrition for maternal health. And if you want to possibly collaborate in the future or build out a programmatic offering from that lens, we can connect you to Jewel Garcia. So I'll drop his information in the chat for that as well. And my question was, as far as the grant for Fordham, how is the RFP, when I think about the New Jersey representative in migrant justice or immigrant justice, how is the application inclusive or not asking somebody's national identity? Like, do you have to be an American citizen to apply?
So just from a point of clarification, it would be the institution that is applying. So the individual doesn't have to necessarily share their individual information. And that's something that I'm happy to engage and talk separately if you think that that can be a challenge, specifically for folks that may not have status or may fear of sharing their status. If that you think can be a challenge, that is something we're still developing the application, and specifically thinking what is the right tool and the questions to ask. But just a note, and I know that I'm at time. For the non-competitive application, we're not necessarily expecting to be very invasive in terms of questions. So I don't think that we need to get to that point of specificity. It is more on like the organization that is applying.
Thank you. So I just want to assure everyone, you are going to have more time to give reflections, ask additional questions after this next segment that we're going into. But we did want to have an opportunity to have a panel talk about managing federal challenges and lessons learned. Many of the questions that you all have asked have really come out of how do we take advantage of this opportunity given the capacity limitations and the requirements of the federal government. So Melissa Miles, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, is going to moderate a panel with Hazel Applewood, the CEO of Ironbound Community Corporation, John Compton, the Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Transformation, and Dwayne Tyndall, Executive Director of Alternatives for Community and Environment. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa now this is a great panel. This is exciting. So there you go, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Sarita. So glad to see my panelists here, folks that I really respect and have been working with for some time now. Dwayne's under ACE, if you're looking for him, Christine. So just to set up the panel a little bit, this is an extension of what I spoke about in the intro, which is just, really giving us an opportunity to think about and to play within our minds the idea of what it would look like for our organizations to be able to benefit from this federal funding, specifically in this moment, but also being aware that there are challenges, and the EPA has done their best, I think, to address some of those challenges through standing up the TIC-TACs, through the grant makers, through their own technical assistance, but we understand that there may still be gaps. So I'm bringing these three folks here today to talk about, how they surmounted some of those inevitable hurdles that come along with managing federal funding. I want to first go around and have folks introduce themselves. Please tell us a little bit about your organization and the work you do and which federal grants you hold. So again, just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, your organization, the work you do, and which federal grants you hold. So I'll start with John.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I work for a small organization in Camden, New Jersey, and we do environmental advocacy, urban farming, and now flood mitigation planning. And we were awarded a 2022 National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Coastal Resiliency Grant.
Thanks, John. Hazel, would you go next?
Sure. My name is Hazel Applewhite. I am the CEO for Ironbound Community Corporation. Ironbound is an agency, a 55-year-old agency that's located in the Ironbound section of Newark. We do a large amount of services, right? We do environmental justice work, both at a state, federal, and national level. We do early childhood, community development, a lot of advocacy work, of course, youth programming, domestic violence, financial opportunities, job placement, job training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've been with the agency for a little over 14 years now. I used to serve as CFO, and currently I'm serving as the CEO for the last 2 years. And I am very pleased to serve on this panel and also to share the information that I have.
Thanks, Hazel. Can you name some of the federal grants you hold or which programmatic areas they're in?
Sure. So we currently have Administration for Children and Families that's under Head Start. We've had that grant for over about 15 years now. We have VOCR, which is a domestic violence grant. We have grants from the Office of Safety, the Department of Safety rather, and we're currently working on an EPA grant right now in which we're in the pre-award stage.
Excellent. Thank you, Hazel. Dwayne?
Dwayne Tyndall, Executive Director of Alternatives for Community Environment. We are in Boston, Mass. We are a part of the Strengthening Community Grant Maker Grant, similar to Fordham. And ACE been around 30 years, and we're a base building organization. We're just a real EJ organization with those transit, public health, housing, youth organizing. Thank you.
Thank you all. So as you can see, very different organizations, all with different degrees of experience with federal funding, grants that are very different. And, hopefully we'll be able to shed a little bit of light on this process for you all. So just jumping right in, I'm going to start with Dwayne. So as you mentioned, you just recently won, you're part of the winning team for the EPA Grant Makers Award for your region. And so your region covers the New England states, as we know. What type of partnerships did you need to create and to apply for the grant? So, who were you talking to in the pre-application stage? How did you nurture and develop those relationships? How did you know who to talk to? And then the same thing, but on the other side, right? Now that you've gotten the grant, who are you working with to actually implement?
So we work with the Community First Foundation. We also work with the Climate Justice Alliance. We kind of built our team as we went along. We decided that we needed a strong admin function to kind of manage EPA and take on the resources. So we brought on a large nonprofit organization that has some relationships to communities and neighborhoods. Then we recruited a philanthropic organization, grassroots fund, that have experience in participatory grant making. And then ACE was, in my eyes, was the one that tried to bring the culture of what a neighborhood-based EJ movement principles should look like in a federal grant. So that's how we built out our team. You always need help and strong allies in these grants, from community, from philanthropic sources. I mean, we've been getting help from the Bar Foundation, which is a regional grantor in our region. But you really need someone that could really match EPA expectations relative to, especially in this grant, a very unclear expectations as of right now. So those are our partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. So I heard, community partners, I heard philanthropic partners, grant makers, basically private foundations, as well as technical assistance partners that help you build out the administrative capacity of your organization, as well as larger nonprofits that may have that experience in, managing federal funds. Let's turn to you, John. So when we spoke over a year ago, you were sort of at the start of this federal grant, your first one. So what are some of the challenges that you've encountered in this time? And what solutions have you used to overcome them?
Okay, so we're a very small organization. And as you said, this is our first federal grant. And probably we were awarded this grant a little bit before we were ready. And so there have been many things that we've learned along the way. So I'd like to mention 3 areas that we've had challenges that may help you. One is delays, the second is finances, and the third is contractors. So for delays, we had a grant, in our proposal, we had a calendar for our project. And shortly after being awarded, I heard from another more experienced person that we should expect there to be delays. And that in their experience, they can be up to 2 years before projects start, which shocked me. But at least it prepared me for the fact that we did not have grant activation for 10 months. So you need to have some sort of buffers in place so that you can plan ahead for that. We ended up having to actually cut an entire program that we normally hold every year in order to bide over until we can get our grant activated. You cannot incur costs. You cannot have any reimbursements until the grant is activated, at least for NIFWIF programs. Second is finances. So as a small nonprofit, we never hit the threshold for needing a financial audit. And now we're going to have enough expenses that we're going to get over the $300,000 budget threshold that we're going to need a financial audit. So in order to prepare for that, we need internal controls that are at a higher standard. We need bookkeeping that is at a higher standard. And there's additional costs associated with those things. So you need to factor that in and be ready. And then since it's the reimbursement grants, you have to have cash available to pay out before you can get reimbursed. And some of the budget items that you have may be for contractors that need to be paid in large chunks of money. And for a small nonprofit like us, if we need to pay out $25,000, that's something we've never done before. So we sought a line of credit, and seeking a line of credit at a bank is a whole other area that we did not know anything about. It took us at least 6 months to secure that. So we finally did that. We had to learn about business credit, which is different from personal credit. And we had denials. We finally did get that line of credit, but that is another hurdle that you need to think about. And then the last area is contractors. You may be contracting out in your grant, and you may be thinking of a contractor that you know and be tempted to write them into the grant, as we did, which can be a mistake because there are federal procurement policies that you must follow, and you must document that you have followed these policies for choosing any contractors. And so you have to have, depending on the amount that you're budgeting for a contractor, you have to have either a proposal or a bid process, and there's rules to follow. So I had to learn about all of that. We had to learn how to write an RFP properly, how to answer questions from contractors, how to hold a pre-proposal meeting, and then we have to write a contract. So you need help with all of these things. And I didn't do this by Googling. I did this by getting help from experienced people. And I think it sounds like through the efforts of this, this seminar and the different resources that have been spoken about today, there's a little bit more help available, and you should definitely take advantage of it because there are things that you cannot anticipate.
Wow, John, thank you so much, for your honesty. I think, your story was definitely one of the ones that led me to, work with the DEP to try to put this together. Because yes, we want many groups to be able to access these sources of funding, but there are realities and tough ones. And, federal money is not philanthropic money. It comes with a different set of rules and a different set of expectations and a different set of back end consequences if they are not met in the right way. So, again, shout out to the technical assistance centers who are helping folks to come online with this. So moving on to Hazel. So Hazel, as you mentioned, you all carry several sources of federal funding, and you have for many years across different programs. What operational structures do you have in place to manage the programmatic, administrative, and financial components of your grants? So you have all these grants, different programs. How are you tracking this all? How are you tracking that the work is getting done, that the money's being spent? Please tell us a little bit about how you all are managing that.
Sure, thank you. It's important to have, obviously, like John said, systems in place. It's also important for folks to be talking within your organization, right? Some of these, some smaller organizations, you have the ED that's kind of leading that writing process with partners, right? It's important for the ED to be talking to the programmatic staff, so everyone is bought into the deliverables of the grant, whether it be programmatic, financials, right? And everybody understands the grant. For tracking, right? Let's talk about the financial part of tracking. It is very important that you have a financial system that's able, or if you're working with a fiscal sponsor, that you are asking the right questions to that fiscal sponsor, that they have the correct systems in place, such as you're doing fund accounting. So if you have a various amount of grants, that you're able to track your EPA grant on one separate grant code. And that those expenses are also aligned to the budget. So your system allows you to either put the budget in, or you're working on an Excel sheet that you have that budget, right? The approved budget, and that you're assuring that you're spending against the budget. So you need to have a financial person that understands non-for-profit accounting and also understands fiscal management and understands how to work with government grants, because that's going to be important to the tracking, to the billing, to understanding the policies. That's very important. Sometimes we see grants, like we're seeing a lot of grants now to apply for. I stress that before you apply for those grants, that you make sure what you're going to be responsible for on the programmatic side, as far as being in compliance and policies, and also on the fiscal side, because then you may get a culture shock, right? Once you dig deeper into it. And that also allows you time to plan. So for example, on the fiscal side, you're going to need a fiscal manual, right? You may have never had to have an in-depth fiscal manual that tells you step by step, how do you do a drawdown? How do you respond to awards? How do you cut your checks, right? Who's signing for your checks? These are all things that federal agencies want to make sure that you have those checks and balances in place. So it's important to have that and have fiscal staff that actually understands that, and that's not being controlled by a programmatic staff or a executive director that may not have experience in that area. No disrespect to executive directors, because I'm one myself, right? But if you don't have a financial background, get someone who has a financial background to help you out here. On the programmatic side, you want to make sure that you have a system in place that's tracking those deliverables. So if you're saying you're going to do, and I'm using this really randomly, right? You're going to build 50 units, right? Or you're going to do, 50 seminars, right? Whatever the project may be, that you are tracking that, and you're also having backup for it, right? You are having backup for everything that you do, whether you're using a tracking sheet, whether you're using a system, you're uploading those backups that you can easily reference it. You understand what the grantor's reporting looks like. So then that will tell you how much detail, how much backup you'll need, and what systems you should have in place. So reading your award letter, right? Understanding pre-award and your award letter, what the expectation is, and then designing systems that then match those award letters, the criterias in the award letters, right? So if the award letter is saying that you need to do a quarterly report, and within the quarterly report, these are the items you need within the quarterly report, you then have a system internally, right, that you can information gather in order to do those reports. You want to also make sure, very important, no silo here. Program needs to be talking to fiscal. Program needs to be talking to payroll. Program needs to be talking to HR, fiscal, payroll. Everyone needs to be talking, right? And this is not only for federal grants. I actually highly encourage you to just have all of these departments talking. We have a tendency to have the silo approach, right? That folks are working, and we know we're doing good work. But if you want to build strong systems and get buy-ins from all level, you want to make sure that all those departments are talking. You want to make sure that your fiscal person is meeting with your programmatic person, whether it's once a month, quarterly. I would recommend, if you're the first time getting a federal grant, and it's a larger federal grant, that you know, in the beginning, you guys are almost meeting weekly, and then you can transition into a monthly meeting that you're actually looking at those numbers and understanding those numbers. And again, I want to stress the fiscal sponsorship. If you're going out there and you're getting someone who's going to be a special sponsor for you, you want to make sure that that person have the capacity, right? And they're aligned. You guys are aligned, right? Because that can also be a disaster story if that's not happening. And like John said, you want to make sure you have the financial capacity. A lot of these grants are reimbursable. You want to find out if the grant gives advances, because that's going to help you. Some grants give 25 advance. You know, that's really going to help you if you're able to do that. If you're not able to do that, then before you get awarded these grants, you want to make sure that, because it's reimbursement. If you're spending $100,000, you want to make sure that you have a way to get that money through the door. You also want to make sure that you have, you know, if you're over the threshold for an audit, you want to make sure that you're getting that audit done, you're getting it done timely. And also that audit is going to have you where you're going to have to prepare schedules. You're going to have your bank recs need to be done. So you want to make sure it goes back to, again, having a strong fiscal department that can manage that process for you. So I hope I answered, you know, what you wanted to answer, Melissa, and I'll be more than happy to add any more if you'd like me to.
Thank you so much, Hazel. So, I mean, I think you really laid a lot of information out there for folks. I love your comment about the EDs, because you're right. You know, NJEJA earlier this year was awarded our first federal grant. We've been pass-through recipients on other grants. Pass-through recipients comes with its deliverables and expectations and reporting, but it is not the same amount of responsibility as holding the grant, you know, as the statutory partner or the lead organization. So again, fortunately, there are multiple opportunities for folks to get involved. You know, some of these grants, like the Communities Change, you know, you could apply potentially as a statutory partner. Others, like the grant maker, you can apply as a pass-through recipient. So there are different levels of responsibility that comes with either one. You know, but as you hear, you do need to be thinking about and constructing administrative back office procedures, staffing, whether it's consultants or full-time folks or part-time folks. You know, we should not be sort of going into this kind of situation blindly. And help. You know, one thing we've heard a lot here today, and I can attest to, because, you know, some of these folks I work with closely on my organizational finances, and, you know, as part of my finance team, you know, I think I have 3 members of my finance team on this call today. You know, so it's important to find people who know a lot and, you know, build those relationships and tap into them. So we're coming up to time, but I do want to take a couple of minutes to see if there's a question or two from the participants to illuminate anything that folks think, you know, could use another word or two. Okay. So I don't see any hands or in the chat. So what I'll do then is, you know, again, in a little bit of a round. Oh, okay. So Dr. Bito, would you like to, I think that yours is the first hand I saw. Okay, maybe you could.
Yes, I would just like to uplift, I dropped it in the chat as well. If also some of you can speak to, so my history with grant reporting has been 2 types, 2 dashboard systems. One is more like an analytical resource dashboard, just more access of what you completed as a program. And then the other is more grant reporting oversight. But I wanted you to all speak to amending grant proposals. Because as you go through the process of implementing your program, sometimes you have to make amendments. If you could speak to that.
Got you. Is anybody willing to take that, just because we're pressed for time, so maybe one of you could speak to that? Any takers? Amending grant proposals?
I can jump in there with the amending grant proposal. So are you speaking, just so I understand, after it's awarded?
That's a yes. And, you know, Hazel, also feel free to keep it brief, because I also think a question like that has to really be directed towards the grant manager of a specific grant, but you can answer how has that gone for you in the past?
Sure, exactly what you said. You should be in communication with the grant manager, and it has to do with the tracking that you're seeing that you're not going to meet certain deliverables. So on, whether it be on the programmatic side or on the budget side, right, you're asking to revise, the award, but that should be a conversation with your grants manager. And it's really important that you understand the timeline and start that conversation earlier rather than later.
Thank you, Hazel. Nastasia?
Yes, I just had a quick clarifying question on just in what's being described is your organization being the holder of the federal grant versus what Fordham was talking about as a pass-through. Are those requirements the same as what's being discussed, or is that different?
Dwayne, you want to take that one?
What was the question?
The difference between being the holder of the federal grant and being a pass-through recipient.
Well, with the Strengthening Communities, we are the administrative arm of it, similar to Fordham. So we, in Strengthening the Grant, you have the grant, it's a $50 million grant, and it's separated 10 million admin, 40 million pass-through. So since we are on the admin side, we are not a part of the, receiving the $40 million. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Thank you. And just to add a little bit there, basically the recipient organization is the one that has to be in direct communication with the grant making agency. They're the ones who have the legal and fiscal responsibility to make sure that the programs are executed as per contract. They're the ones that if there's any kind of audit or anything like that, it would be them. Whereas the ones who are getting as pass-throughs, they are accountable to the organization that passed it through, not directly to the EPA. There is still responsibility and risk. I mean, there's risk anytime you take money, whether it be private or public monies, but it doesn't come with the same degree of risk or responsibility. But then, also it's more lucrative normally to hold the grant yourself. And I see there's one more question. We'll see if we can get to that one quickly. Phil?
Thank you, Melissa. I think the panel maybe addressed this already, but I'm wondering, so encountering federal and other grants, nonprofits the requirement to be nonprofit frequently excludes fiscally sponsored groups, it's very costly in terms of costs and labor to get and maintain that full nonprofit status. And I was wondering if the panel has any comments about that for fiscally sponsored groups.
Yeah, I think so. Sarah's putting in the chat that she I don't know if it's to answer to that, but dealt with this.
Yeah.
You could, is that you, Sarah?
Yeah, I could share, Melissa, if you'd like. So we just had this issue actually. And so what it is you have to change the qualification of that partner from a subawardee to something called a support participant. And a support participant then is different qualification, meaning that they don't have to be a 501(c) and they can be partnered with you, but they can't qualify as a subawardee. And this was something that we didn't know initially, and we found out the hard way, and is something we're dealing with right now with one of our partners. But what you can do is still write them in as an other type of expense within your budget. And then they can be called something called a participant support contract. And that is actually sometimes a little bit better because the EPA, what we've learned, does not recognize fiscal sponsors. And so it's actually, as a subawardee, they can't be fiscal sponsors. They can't utilize their fiscal sponsor. And as contractors, they cannot be, they have to be corporations, for example. So I'll drop in something about what the support participants are, because I was just reading it yesterday, so I'll send that to you. But that's a way that, at least for us, we're going to be utilizing that other qualification to work with community-based organizations that aren't 501(c)(3)s, because many of them don't want to become 501(c)(3)s, but want to be working in the community and can really be the ones doing the work on the ground. So I'll drop that link for you to help you navigate that as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And for Phil or anyone else that wants more information on that, Sarah did put the information for the TICTAC in there. Again, that is the Technical Assistance Hub for the region. That's a place where you can definitely go with questions like this. So this has been really amazing. And just to tie it off, I'm going to ask everyone just to give our participants 1 or 2 words of advice going into this federal funding process. And John, we'll start with you.
You need to find mentors.
Thank you. Hazel?
Policies, 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 internal policies. Get your policies together.
Thank you. Dwayne?
Realize what you don't know and find those mentors, and like Hazel said, develop those policies to contain this grant. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time and your expertise and sharing your experiences with us all today. I've learned so much, and I will hand it back to you, Sarita.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you to that amazing panel. Very insightful. And it's really important to have opportunities to learn from folks who actually are doing the work, have done the work. So we, in that vein, we want to have about 25 minutes now for all of the participants to just engage in sharing your reflections, ask any additional questions you may have. And this is really to all of the panelists. Thank you all for the details that you put forward. A lot of us, including me, have been curious about how some of these programs are unfolding and what the requirements will be and how to tap into them. And so that has been really helpful to have that information shared. So reflections on the day, what additional things you'd like to know, any other questions you may have. And I'm going to turn it back to Candace to kind of navigate us through this hand-raising portion of the discussion. And we'll do that till 12:55, and then we'll come back and close out and get everybody out on time.
Sounds great. Sherelle.
I was trying to turn on my camera. Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me here. The timing couldn't be better. I'm a community organizer for the East Trenton neighborhood, and we work with the community, the people on the ground. And then when I found out about an environmental justice of lead 2 years ago, someone's like, Sherelle, you're already working on environmental justice issues. Work on this one. But we didn't think that it could get so big, and that, I mean, there are issues out there. There's real issues, and it's really affecting low-income Black and Brown communities. I am so happy that you guys are here. The timing couldn't be better for me to be able to help my community with the help that they need in a direction that they put forward for the help that they need. It's not people coming in, oh, you need to do this, do that, and then leave, but it's all with the community focus. And I just want to say thank you, because the East Trenton neighborhood is faced with a burden of a lot of lead toxins. Our children, even the low levels, our children are having effects with their behavior, with their learning. And because there's like this time gap when they're 2-year-olds crawling, because the homes out here, oh my God,
poor water infrastructure, poor housing, racism, and poverty, and then environmental justice issues. But because of you, because of Tic Tac, you're helping, and I need help because I need to know how to mobilize. We're working with our city, our local government, our mayor is there, our county is there. We're working with EPA Region 2. We're working with well, we need DOH. We need the Department of Health. We need their input more. But more than that, I need to learn how to mobilize the residents now and to educate them and to have them all in one place. And I know I can learn that all through Tic Tac. Thank you for doing this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for those reflections, Sherelle. Rose, I saw your hand up earlier, but I think you may have put it down. Feel free to jump in. In the meantime, I have a queue of questions that have been put in the chat throughout the morning. And so let me introduce some of those. And so one from way back when, from Onester, says, what about waste projects? And so what I'm interpreting that to mean is, are waste projects an eligible activity that can be applied for in any of the grants that have been talked about today? So Iris or Dave, if you're still on, can you talk about waste projects and the eligibility to apply for those?
Yeah, by waste projects, I mean, that could include solid waste, hazardous waste. This just depends. Definitely solid waste infrastructure and programs designed for that are eligible under the community change grants. Cleanup of hazardous waste sites would either be a federal lead or a state lead. But once the sites are cleaned up, then that property could be eligible for other types of development, right? Whether it's brownfields or a Superfund site that's now has been delisted from the national priorities list.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
The next one from earlier on in the chat is from Jacqueline Bido. You were asking, how will the funding to the national nonprofit organizations be governed so that they don't keep a majority of the funding? So I'm here. Yeah, go for it. Iris, yeah.
I think I was just going to ask for clarification on that question. Did you mean like making sure that they don't? Yeah, I don't think it's possible for them to keep most of the funds because again, there's very strict reporting policies that they have to abide by. There's a certain number of subawards that they have to give out, all those types of things. So it'd be very difficult for an entity to keep federal funds for themselves, just based upon everything that they have to agree to as a grant or as a grantee, and then someone that would be administering subawards. So I hope that's helpful. And I was also going to just drop the solid waste infrastructure recycling grant program that Dave just spoke to, if that may be helpful for the previous question.
Sounds good. And we invite Jacqueline back to add any points of clarity to that question if needed. But for the meantime, we'll move on to the next one from Laura Brinkerhoff. And her question was, what happens to this funding if the administration changes in November?
Go ahead,
the
Dave.
funding. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say the funding is here by law. It's here. It's available for us. I don't think and down the road. I don't really think about the administrative changes possibly, but no, this is by statute and it is available for us. And so I think that's pretty much set in stone.
Yes, and to add on to what Dave said, even in government shutdowns, written into law that these programs will continue. So yeah, hope that's helpful.
Great, thanks for that clarity. So is there anyone else who would like to offer a reflection or has additional questions? Rose.
Let's see, sorry. Yeah. Thank you for putting this together. It's made me feel excited about being in this space, but then it's also kind of scary, right? Because you hear all the wonderful things that people are doing while coming up against some obstacles. So, it gives us an opportunity to look at both sides, which is very important from what we think to expect and what we should actually expect. So, thanks for that. My question is, I heard someone spoke about affordable housing or building housing. When you do that, do you have to be the administrator or would you just be like a pass-through on the grant? Does that make sense? Hello?
I think it makes sense, Rose. I think we're looking for a person who can take that question. Dave.
I was just about to say, I cannot answer that question. I don't want to make up stuff, but we can certainly look into that and get back. Okay, that's all right.
Maybe if any of the community-based organizations who have a housing and affordable housing as part of your portfolio would like to offer words of advice in response to that question, please feel free to jump in. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone's taking the bait on that, Rose, but hopefully we can connect you to someone on that specific question. Jacqueline.
I wanted to know, for the organizations that are hosting this, do you have a percentage of under served over marginalized community organizations that you want to help apply? Like, is there a percentage that we should support in like getting you to meet? Have you identified that percentage of organizations that you hope are applying for this funding, at least from the state of New Jersey?
I'm not aware of any percentage, Jacqueline. It's we want to ensure obviously this is one way to get to reach a broader audience. We would really love a good geographic representation, again, in disadvantaged communities. But I have not heard that there's a percentage as a goal. But that's another question I could take back and just get some clarification on. Because what we don't want to see is like, I'm just going to make something up, 80% of these grants, that's really high, but some very high percentage going to just, like one state or territory. And the rest of the states and territories are not somehow benefiting from this as well.
I also wanted to go back to the previous question about housing. Actually, you know what? We'll find an answer. Yeah, never mind.
Okay, thanks, Iris. I see a question just came in from Doug Freeman. You're saying, how can you see if an organization has already been granted in the area you are considering, and what programs will be doing so there are no duplications?
So I would say EPA keeps close track of that. Some of that information is publicly available. Some of that is not, but yes, it's pretty well closely tracked on like who has been granted in what area. There are some grant funding programs, like for example, Clean School Bus, where it can be multiple entities applying for the same like geographic area. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. There shouldn't really be any duplications in something like that. But for example, yeah, but there are certain grant programs where folks can reapply, but it shouldn't be any duplications. So I hope that's helpful. And Dave, I don't know if you want to add on any more.
The only thing I was going to add is that, yeah, we do closely track the grant recipients. starting with the award date, right? If an applicant has applied and been initially selected, it's probably not going to be reflected in our database until the actual award has been made. So there, we do have that tracking, and that would be from our grants management department in our regional office, and headquarters has the same thing.
Okay, Jacqueline, you have your hand up again, and then there's a question from Nicole Miller in the chat we'll read out next.
Yes, I just wanted to know, where should we be subscribed to receive the announcements about the funding? Is there a specific site? Because I don't recall receiving the first announcement when this application first opened, so I want to make sure I'm subscribed.
So I'm going to ask Iris if she knows the answer to this question in terms of listservs. I don't know the answer to that. I hope the answer is EPA has a listserv that we can share with folks to make sure that we reach as broad of an audience as possible.
Yes, there are. Jacqueline, I'm about to drop this one. This one is from headquarters, so keeps track of everybody, the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. You can send a blank email to this email that I'm about to share in the chat. You're welcome.
Nice. Another plug is that the Office of Environmental Justice in New Jersey at the DEP has a newsletter, and my team can drop the link in the chat for you. We'll also include both the information that Iris just shared and all of the information we've shared throughout the day, and the link to sign up for New Jersey's Environmental Justice newsletter, and we share grant opportunities that way as well.
I can attest that NJDEP's newsletter is awesome. So a lot of the same info you'll find in NJDEP's listserv also.
Thanks, Iris. So Nicole is asking, does the school bus program require the old bus to be destroyed, or can it be donated to a school district in need?
So it could be donated or it has to go to scrap. Like the parts taken apart. Yeah. So both.
Okay. And Dave, your hand is up. Go for it.
Yeah, I want to have, basically, I want to give everybody the chance to ask their questions. I do have just a couple of things to underscore, amplify once we're done with the questions.
Okay, can we get a time check from Sarita? You said till 12:55, right? I think.
Yes, we have until 12:55, so 11 minutes. I'm sorry, 6 minutes.
All right, so I don't see any more hands or questions. Go for it, Dave. Do your plug.
Sure. Yeah, so John, in the previous panel, which was amazing, John Compton and Hazel presented a lot of great information, things to consider. One thing I really want to underscore is the audits that will be coming your way, and those can be daunting. We've seen great grant recipients slip up here and there, and they didn't provide all of the information, say like from 5 years ago, and we will then engage in a what we call letter A and a letter B process, whereby we're saying we need this information. If you cannot provide us with that information within a certain amount of time, we will have to ask you for the cost back. All right, and that's the last thing that we want to do. So I was very excited to see that the Tic Tacs are available for pre and post award for those very sorts of things, to ensure that we are never in that you're never in that situation of having to send money back to the federal government. The other matter I believe John raised was on pre-award costs. Pre-award costs are allowed for competitive grants as long as the budget and performance period is within the budget and performance period. But those pre-award costs are allowed. Page 17 of those FAQs gets into the specific citations and has a little more information. And then as far as reimbursements under the community change grants, the reimbursement process is going to be a very accelerated process. Essentially, there's something called ASAP, which is I'm not sure, it's as soon as possible. They just adopted that name. That within 1 to 2 business days after you submit a reimbursement request, it should hit your bank. So that is an improvement. So I just wanted to plug that.
Thanks, Dave. So another 2 questions have come in. So Quine Palmer Chambliss, you're saying, what are we doing to make sure that that the majority of grants do not go to white-led 501c3s that have machines in place to successfully go after grants? So are there any efforts to make sure that there's inclusivity or to achieve a diversity of applicants, not just the traditional machines?
Yeah, so I would say to answer that question, you know, a lot of the grants do have a Justice 40 focus. So really just making sure that justice is centered, that it's really making sure that, for example, community change grants, making sure that small community-based organizations are centered. And that's where the technical assistance offered through, for example, community change or We Act is really, really helpful. So we encourage, you know, all of the small organizations to really utilize the technical assistance to be able to get these grants. Dave, I don't know if there's any like tracking of who's getting grants based on like race and who leads the organization. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. So Dave, I'll let you speak to that. I don't think so. Yeah.
I'm not aware. I mean, the major criteria, which does not answer the question that being asked, is that these all have to benefit disadvantaged areas as identified on EPA's IRA map of the nation. So I'm going to do a plug for that map. Just it's so exciting. You can just drill down, look by census tract on a disadvantaged community, but I'm not sure that we're tracking the racial makeup of the 501c3s. I just can't answer that question right now.
Yeah.
All right, so seeing no other hands up, I'm going to take the last minute of just to take the liberty to do a plug of my own. So I've been seeing in the chat that a lot of you are wanting to meet each other and connect and follow up, and that you've been appreciative of everything that's been shared and talked about today. And so we want to help you to be able to do that, to network and connect with your colleagues, especially because you couldn't do that in person today as we planned. So my Office of Environmental Justice is working on what we're calling an Environmental Justice Directory. And so that's going to be an online database of people who voluntarily agree to have their information be shared in this database. And so the vision and the idea for it is twofold. One, so that applicants that are subject to needing permits from the Department of Environmental Protection can know who to contact and who to reach out to if they are doing stakeholder meetings and public hearings and meetings where they're seeking input and testimony from the communities in which they're looking to locate in, so that they can know who to reach out to and can't say to us, the DEP, oh, sorry, we had a low turnout at the meeting, we didn't know who to reach out to. Now there will be a database online organized by region to say who wants to take on information and who's agreeing to be contacted by facilities is one goal. The second goal is for all of you to have a peer-to-peer networking opportunity to meet people in different regions and to share experiences and best practices and lessons learned. So if you agree, we would love to have you sign up and be an early adopter, someone who's agreeing to sign up on our public environmental justice directory. So my team will drop that in the chat and we'll send it out to you afterwards. We'd love to have, again, a group of early adopters that are going to be publicized and published on this directory so that we can launch it publicly and it's not blank. So you'd be doing a lot to help us out to really populate the directory, and it will be populated and updated as we go along and people agree to be on our list. So hopefully that's a good way for you all to connect with each other, and we'll be looking to plan more events, more webinars, and have in-person, hopefully, opportunities for you to network. So I'll pass it back over to Sarita.
Thank you, Candace. And thank you everyone for great reflections and really good questions, right? And thank you to all of our resource providers, panelists, for being willing to take questions and go back and figure out what some of the answers are for questions that aren't immediately answerable. So with that said, we are gonna hand the podium back over to Melissa. She's gonna close us out and talk about some next steps. Before I do that, I just want to take the opportunity to again thank you for your participation. This was an excellent conversation, and I am personally very excited to hear Candace talk about future activities and future events and ways to continue to engage. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa.
Thank you so much, Sarita, for navigating us through the day. I also want to thank the NJEJA team who really worked tirelessly on, just, my desire just a few weeks ago to respond to the, the urgency of this moment and get, work with the DEP to host this seminar. So, just a big shout out to them, to the DEP team, who also just navigated everything so well and professionally, and, are just always very easy to work with. To all of the partners who came on the call from Fordham, from WEACT, from the EPA. And I do want to acknowledge that originally we were going to spend half of the in-person day talking about DEP specific funding. So that is still to come. That part is really embedded in the webinars, the seminars that the DEP has been doing around the state. And there are a couple coming up that, the DEP may want to pop into the chat. And I just encourage everyone to keep engaging. I see that a lot of you are signed up for the TIC-TAC webinar on the 26th, where we will be diving into many of the same topics, again, with Dwayne and with Ms. Peggy Shepard from WEACT, folks who are holding large federal grants from the perspective of community-based organizations. So we're again going to have an in-depth conversation on how you utilize this moment to actually build out the infrastructure of your organization in a sustainable way, which is not, it's not easy because federal grants, state grants, they're often restricted grants, they're for specific programs, but we all know if you run an organization from program to program, it's going to be hard to have real impact. You need infrastructure, you need leadership, you need staff, you need livable wages, not just livable wages, but wages that folks can thrive on. So, we're really going to have that conversation about, how you grow in a sustainable way through this moment. Because, one thing that I learned from my mentor is that money can also be used to destabilize moments and movements, especially when it's not managed in ways that are sustainable and that are, good for organizations and communities. So, we're going to keep working to make sure that information is out there. So what we ask of all of you is to, to be learners, right? Unfortunately, I don't think there's any organization that functions solely to, provide information. There are some organizations out here that are tracking each grant, and you can find out about those tracking systems through engagement with the TIC-TACs. But we got to engage, right? We got to put on our thinking caps. We got to put on our networking caps, and we have to be willing to do the hard labor. this is not going to happen without labor, I can assure you, and without hard labor. And so, you know, as long as folks are willing to do that deep dive, to do that engagement, to keep trying to learn, you know, I think that no matter what happens, we're going to see a stronger environmental justice and climate justice community coming out of this moment. So, you know, there will be more information coming out from NJDEP. Please subscribe to their newsletter. You can also subscribe to the NJEJA newsletter through our website at njeja.org. You can subscribe to the TikTok, plenty of outlets, you know. There's so much. Find your lane. That's just all I can say. Find your lane. There's so many lanes. Anyone right now could lead you to good results. Just you know, but you got to be willing to see it through to the end. So talking about seeing through to the end, thank you all so much for your patience on this morning, this rainy morning. We appreciate you all and looking forward to see you and you all again soon. Take care.